All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Willow City Council special meeting on July 6th. We will call this meeting to order at 10 o'clock. First up, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone, please stand. Pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Hudson,
Here.
Vice Mayor Thomas,
Here.
Councilmember Hanson,
Here.
Councilmember Pride. Here. Thank you.
Okay. Next item up, item 4, discussion and action calendar. All matters on the discussion and action calendar will be discussed and acted on individually. Individuals wishing to speak on these items are asked to complete a speaker's card and submit it to the city clerk. Comments should be directed to the mayor and council members and are limited to 3 minutes. By law, the council cannot discuss or take action on items not listed on the posted agenda. Item 4A, law enforcement consulting, recommended action, authorize the city manager to execute an agreement with Maloney Consulting and Investigation Solutions in the not to exceed amount of $60,000 for law enforcement related administrative consulting to assist the city of Willows with short-term law enforcement solutions, as well as assist with developing the required administrative foundation to reestablish a municipal police department in the longer term. Marty Brown.
Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. The item that's before you is to, as you just stated, to authorize the city manager, me, to execute an agreement with Maloney Consulting and Investigation Solutions. Mike Maloney is here in the audience. He is the principal of Maloney Consulting, and he would be helping. As we all know, the city has lost its law enforcement contract as of June 30th, which was last Tuesday. And so Mike would be helping in the immediate short term with negotiating contracts and agreements with local nearby jurisdictions for additional law enforcement and patrol coverage. Presumably that would be overtime of officers from other jurisdictions, and that would be a short-term measure until we get the situation with the GCSO resolved. And in addition to that, longer term, Mike would be looking at how we could move forward with developing the administrative framework and foundation for reestablishing the city's police department. I don't have any other background information beyond that unless you have specific questions. I do think that Councilmember Hanson wanted to add something as well to the recommendation, staff recommendation here today.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Mr. Mayor, if I may. No, thank you. Yeah, good morning, everybody. Thank you for attending today. It's always good to see our citizens in the audience. I've known Mike since he started his law enforcement career with the Willows Police Department in, I believe, 1980, Mike. Then a year or so later, he transitioned over to the Glynn County Sheriff's Office. I worked with Mike until he left to go to work for Chico Police Department in 1985. Mike is a very knowledgeable, experienced individual. He was a fine law enforcement officer. We worked together quite well and quite a bit back in the days. Our careers mirrored each other, with the exception I stayed over here at the Sheriff's Office and went to a state agency, and Mike went over to Chico Police Department where he spent the entire rest of his career in municipal policing, ultimately becoming the chief of police. Mike is a man of integrity. He's direct. If with Mike, he'll tell you the way it is. He's not going to soft shoe anyone. He knows the players in the region in reference to law enforcement. He has an immense amount of contacts. I did not know that Mike was in the consulting business. I'm glad that he is. I'm very pleased that Mike is willing to step up, if so approved today, and help the city of Willows get basic law enforcement coverage in the short term and transition to a full service police department in the long term. Mike's the man for the job. With Mike, if you afraid to know what the answer is, don't ask him the question, because he will tell you. He will not hold back. He is not shy about telling you the truth. And when Mike tells you something, it is the truth. I I promise, I guarantee that's the way Mike rolls it. That's the way he operates. And that's the way it should be. I appreciate the directness. Fr- From my standpoint, I like dealing people directly and not just getting a song and dance from individuals. You're not going to get a song and dance from Mike. He'll get the job done. Period. That's the way Mike is. I can't express to my colleagues enough that Mike is definitely the man for the job. I'm really pleased that Mike is interested in helping us out. And if we approve this matter today, Mike will definitely help us out. He comes from a long line of law enforcement families. Some of you may know his dad, Bob Maloney, was the first full-time Glynn County District Attorney appointed in 1976. That's when Mike moved here as a teenager. And anyway, it was an honor and a pleasure to serve with Mike. And he's a good man. He's solid. And that's all I had to say. Marty, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Do you have anything further, Marty?
No, unless the council
What-
has questions for me.
Questions from the council? Vice Mayor Thomas, any questions?
Seems pretty straightforward so far.
I guess
That's
part of my
fine.
question is, how did we, nothing against Maloney Consulting, but how did we just come up with a single source firm? Who was involved in that? Was it a city manager? I don't know if the committee actually met and had a discussion about taking this next step that we're taking today. So those were just some of my questions based on some feedback from the community. Like now we're in another special meeting with a single solution kind of in front of us. So curious about that. Kind of curious, I mean, the staff report covers it. And if you look at the consultant engagement letter, is the intent that we're going to hire Maloney Consulting to, it says to give us some administrative foundation for bringing forward a PD. We still have our request out for a statement of qualifications to fully determine the cost of facility, staffing, everything to bring back a PD. And then we're also talking about these short-term patrol and other things. And so I know I have a question, just what does that really mean? If we have other jurisdictions coming in to patrol, do we have dispatch service to facilitate that since we don't have a contract for that? What's the follow-up for that if they're patrolling and something happens? What's the follow-up mechanism look like? So I think we have a lot of things starting to happen. And I'm just not, I just would have questions about the cohesiveness of that. And is the purpose of Maloney Consulting partly to be that technical expertise that we don't currently have on staff to also look at those statement of qualifications when they come in? I think admin, I did chat briefly with Mike before the meeting, you know, all the post certifications, you know, all those things we have to do to even begin the process. You know, it's one thing to get costs, but it's another thing to say procedurally, what else do we have to do? So that's a lot of questions. So I'm here today to listen, you know, as other questions come up and see if I get answers. That's all.
Do you want me to try to answer any of those? So one, I would invite Mike up in just a minute, maybe to address some of that. But I want to just say very clearly, there's no other jurisdiction that I know of in the state of California that has ever been in this situation. The city attorney, I believe, could attest to that. And the fact that I haven't heard from any of my colleagues, I think that with any advice, probably also speaks to that. So some of this is going to be figuring it out as we go along. And I think that if, you know, having all the answers to all the questions that you just asked out of the gate, frankly, just isn't possible because I don't know any other jurisdiction that's ever had to deal with this before. So we are taking somewhat of a leap of faith, but the idea is the leap of faith here and working on this is with somebody with over 30 years of law enforcement experience and who also knows this community really well and has lived here and been an officer in this community, which seems to be something that would be relevant and important to everybody here, both on the council and in the community, to help figure out, you know, how we're going to move forward. We have had some preliminary conversations with the sheriff's office to the extent that we can, because we can't really talk to him about dispatch. And there is an openness and a willingness through a third party to try to figure out how we could do dispatch. So that's another piece that we would have to continue to work on and figure out. But there is, from the third party, there is an openness and willingness to help us through that if this is the direction that the council wants to move forward with. Mike, do you want to get up and say a few words about the proposal?
Morning, council. So there's a number of things, and Lori, your questions are very, very valid. And I know they come also in the context of the council having spent money already to take a look at some parts or pieces of what it might take to rebuild a police department. So I'll say to start with, let me assure you that what I would envision myself coming on for is not to duplicate the efforts that have already been made. Essentially, if I haven't seen the complete document, but if I understand pieces and parts that I believe I have seen, you've been given an operational checklist, pieces and parts that need to be put together to make something happen. But what I see initially that is missing from that is an administrative foundation. And Marty just spoke to probably the most significant piece of that administrative foundation, and that is post. You can't just decide in a incorporated or unincorporated entity that you want to start a police department and then hire a guy or gal to be chief and then say, okay, we got a police department now. The requirements that are on a government entity and that are required of the agency and required of the agency personnel are just almost overwhelming. And all of those things have to be in place before you can start a police department. Things like, things that I know of is general orders that comply with different sections of law that require departments to have policies on certain social and criminal issues, for one. Things like use of force, things like driving, high liability things that we see even now in the public domain that are concerns to citizens about policing. Agencies have to have policies on that in place before they're out there working, or they're opening themselves up to a gigantic liability. And there's a whole myriad of areas that are addressed by Post. And then the other big piece of it is that Post has very specific requirements on initial and annual training that peace officers have to go through, and the program that creates those people, from a rookie academy graduate or an entry-level employee who hasn't even gone to the academy, all the way to 1 year out, end of probation employee. The requirements of that program alone are very specific, and it is a statutory mandate that be in place before you hire peace officers. And from what I have seen so far in the study, those things don't exist. I know that, and I presume that in 2017, that the City of Willows and the police department specifically had an approved field training program. But I can tell you right now that was 9 years ago. And I can almost assure you it is completely outdated. And the post requirements that have come in place since then are going to be very, very significant. So it's that kind of stuff. And then, of course, it comes back to you all. I presume at some point council action was necessary to dissolve the police department, and I also presume that at some point there's going to have to be some sort of resolution of council and perhaps an adjustment of the municipal code to reestablish the police department if that is not in place right now, which I don't know. So I would view my role as in the longer term, kind of complementing the work that you have done. Now, the other component of the role I have is trying to figure out what we can do. I know that all of you are, and I know that Marty is, and I know that Chief Monk is. I'm terrified for Willows right now because you don't have a police department and you have nothing. I've heard anecdotes of the last week that just terrify me for this community. We need to get something out there. And So to that end, our initial thing is going to be having to address all those things that you just said. What are we going to do about radio? What are we going to do about animal control? I hearken back to 1980 when I came on with Gary. And in 1980, it was well established that in Glenn County, we shared a primary radio frequency with the Glenn County Sheriff's Department and the Orland Police Department. And we all worked together and we all depended on each other. And there wasn't a tracking of who owed who, how many favors, and all that kind of thing, and who's paying for what from whom. And so to a degree, it looks like things may have become somewhat that way now, especially in relation to a contract. And that relates to animal control, that relates to radio communications. And then it also relates to, cover officers on calls. So there needs to be enough people out there to do all those things. The other thing is, once you get inside or behind the curtain of police work, there's some daily administrative functions that have to happen. If you're out there arresting people, there's tracking requirements. There's things that have to be reported to the state. Every time an arrest is made, there's paperwork that has to be submitted to the DA's office. There's things like that. And so there needs to be somebody to do it. I mean, it's literally somebody taking the printed out report off the computer and putting it in a package and ensuring that it gets to the DA's office. So if it's not going to be the sheriff's office doing that, and I'm going to say if, because I'm still hopeful for something great to happen. But if it's not the sheriff's office, part of my role would be to help figure out how we're going to make that happen. And that may sooner rather than later result in us having to, bring some sort of administrative level position in, clerical level administrative position in to support what resources we could get from the outside, assuming we're able to. At this point, as you all know, this situation has made national news. And as the city manager has indicated, her colleagues are not speaking of it. And I would agree, from what I've seen, it's absolutely unprecedented. And along with that absence of precedent is a degree of discomfort for other agencies as they potentially look at stepping into the sandbox. And so that may be something that we have to address too. And those are things that, I will work very closely with the city manager on. And obviously there's an urgency, and I know that there's 2 big dates coming up, and I hope those dates will yield something favorable, the court date and continued mediation date. I don't know. Does that help a little bit, Lori?
Yes, thank you.
Anybody, anything else?
Will it be necessary for us to have all those post requirements before, if you are able to find law enforcement to come in? If you, let's say I
No.
went with this contract. So
No.
those post requirements be able to work on, that'd be
Those post-
secondary to first getting patrols
post
here
re-
first. Okay.
The post requirements would only need to be in place to have, once you have an established police department. Now, we're going to, as council members and as a manager and a fire chief, y'all learn how to function very well in ambiguity. We're going to be functioning together in ambiguity that nobody's ever experienced before. And so just as Marty shared in response to that, there's a lot of things that we don't know the answer to now. We're going to have to figure out how to reconcile that. Police officers in other communities, when they come here, they know how to identify a crime. They know how to write a report. But in the short term, we'll have to do things like, maybe for other officers, we're going to have to do things like figure out where do we lodge those records, because they have to be retained. They can't just be submitted a copy to the DA and then oh, it's gone and shred it. So those are some things that we have to do, and we can do that now without post approval. But the other thing is, I've already identified the post regional rep. I shared, I think with Lori maybe, you have a regional representative for the city of Willows whose designated area of responsibility among many other areas in Northern California is the city of Willows. So I've already identified that person, and assuming that council approves this proposal by the city manager, that will be one of my first priorities, to reach out to that person. He is a retired captain from the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department, and his job is to do nothing now but ensure that the law enforcement agencies in this region of the state are in compliance with post standards.
Any further questions from the council? Okay. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor, everything that Mike said is spot on, and the legal and training requirements are it's a heavy lift. It's a very heavy lift creating a police department. So, thank you, Mike, for explaining that to my colleagues.
What's that?
Just one other question for Marty. So this is a not to exceed, and it is a not to exceed 60,000. Some of the people in the community were like, it's 60,000. So it is a not to exceed. With the request for qualifications that we currently have out for determining hard costs for facility and just all the pieces, do we have any ballpark idea of what that might look like, or are we not going to know until we get responses?
We won't know till we get a response. That's why I didn't do an RFP, because I don't really have any idea. I wanted to start with what is somebody's qualifications to develop the cost estimate, and see, as part of that, usually they'll give you an indication of their hourly rate, but maybe not the total cost for the entire project, which, as you know, there'll be a committee of the council reviewing those if and when those come in on July 20th. So I don't know at this point.
Okay, because I just feel like another piece, excuse me, that we need to be working on is, as we're in a new fiscal year with the money that we have allocated to law enforcement in our current budget, as we're spending the money potentially for the firm that's going to be doing the very specifics of facility costs and recommendations and all the uniforms and the staffing, in addition to what Mr. Maloney is going to be bringing forward to us, and those costs. And then as Mike kind of referred to, are we having hopefully some transition services with the Glenn County Sheriff's Office for able to negotiate to continue to have response to 911 calls, potentially some follow-up, animal control. Just looking if we have about 2.4, almost 2.5 in the budget, just, curious what that's going to buy us to keep us going. As you all know, in the community, we are looking into a Mello-Roos Community Services District as a way to fund our startup, because there's really, we don't have an exact number what that looks like, but it's larger than what we have currently. I don't think a Mello-Roos is, when you start looking at home ownership and you look at your community's economic development, a Mello-Roos may or may not be the best fit, but for the options that were presented to us, it was really the best fit for the specific need that we have in hand. So I'm looking forward to, again, fine tuning what those startup costs look like so we can see what that impact might look like for the community. Trust me, we're all very aware up here that a tax is not something any of us want to look at. But as we're looking at this rock and a hard place that we're in, we only have the money, the revenue that we currently have. And if we're going to bring it back, there's a cost to that. So we're also expending money on the Mello-Roos process to bring that forward while we're fine tuning what that dollar figure actually looks like. So we can put that all together so we can be talking with you as a community again about here's what it's going to look like. So we do still have a lot of unknowns in terms of the big picture. But, we have to be doing something today, for community protection. So just know that, we're figuring it out too. None of us have all the answers either. But I did want to just be mindful of talking about money, because I know that's a community concern is, how are we expending the funds we have? What does that leave us? And, how far do we get with what we have?
Darlene, can we go to public comment, please?
Yes. Tom Kelly.
Thank you, council members and mayor. And I would first off agree with everything that Gary said earlier about Mike Maloney. He is a stand-up individual. He is more than capable of doing this job if you so choose to advance this. I don't know if Mike still lives in Magalia or not. Would there be a physical presence here? And I think his comment about the city nationwide coverage and the terrified nation, that is what everybody out here is utterly terrified of not having a police force. And if I remember correctly, the city attorney said the only other time she could remember that this had happened was in Oakland. Is that correct, ma'am?
No.
No, it wasn't that they did not have a police force. It is that they declared a state of emergency due to lack of staffing. It was reduced staffing in the department.
Okay. My hopes, if this does go forward, that we get as much press of something being done as we did of the complete loss of law enforcement. We're a target. The city has got a bullseye on it from every little low-level criminal in the North State and Nevada. So I hope that this is a process that will eventually lead. I think that Mike has more than the qualifications to help us get things established. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Isaiah Rossi.
I'm just gonna waive my time. Thank you.
John Lowe.
Good morning, Mayor, council members, Ms. Brown. I'm John Lowe, live 244 Southville Avenue. And a couple questions I have, and I agree with the consulting contract, by the way. It's good to see someone who understands the local and the regional challenges. And it helped to hear from Mr. Maloney this morning to hear a little bit about his experience. I do have a question though. What is the time frame for recommendations from the consultant?
Well, the immediate, I think immediately what we'll be working on is trying to get additional coverage for the city. And that'll be Mike's first focus so that we have patrols we were talking about. And then moving from that initial and immediate situation towards the longer term, we have not yet discussed what the time frame would be. You know, we have an RFQ that's out right now for a cost estimate for the facility that the responses for the statement of qualifications is due on Monday, July 20th. We'll see if we get response from that. So I think all of these things are moving, you know, kind of concurrently, but he and I have not yet talked about a time frame for the administrative framework for the longer term project of us reestablishing the PD.
Okay. So if the contract's approved, would the deliverables be incrementally or would they at the end of the contract?
I don't know, Mike, if you have a recommendation on that. I mean, you know, I think internally it'll be incrementally with me as staff, but
Figuring out foundationally what Post is going to require, and then legally what is going to be required of the council. But from my perspective, this entire thing is a great urgency for the city. This isn't a thing where, you know, we have time to hire a consultant who will go sit back in his leather chair and put his feet up on a desk and wait for people to call. This is, we need somebody who speaks the language that can hit the ground running right now and do the work that needs to be done. And I say that because the urgency obviously relates to the relationship right now with the sheriff's department. We need to fill that gap for the city of Willows.
Thank you. One last question. As far as the money that's not being spent for policing, does that money stay in the general fund? Is it being set aside for future police expenses?
It just sits in the general fund.
Yeah, and I'm going to guess that we'll probably be expending that in this fiscal year. I mean, ideally, as we're moving forward with extra patrols, there's going to be a cost for that. I'm relatively sure it's not going to be. And ideally, if we are able to negotiate some kind of a transitional contract with the sheriff's office, then obviously that money would need to be used from
Okay,
that fund.
so the money will be spent on police, some
Yes.
type of.
That's
police
what-
protection.
That's what
That-
we budgeted for.
Okay,
Yes.
Budget is approved for the current contract plus 4%. So it's about just under 2.5 million. And that'll just sit there as a line item and be spent only on law enforcement.
thank you. That's all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, John.
I have no other cards.
Okay. With that, council comments?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, this, as has been stated here, I just can't reiterate this strong enough. If this matter is approved, and it should be today, I would stress, the number one priority assigned to Mike would be protection of life and property within the city of Willows, and identifying and deploying qualified professional peace officers to be in the city performing professional law enforcement services as the way it should be. That's number one priority. And then starting the process of rebuilding the heavy burden and lift of rebuilding a police department with the information that Mike provided earlier and all those parts and pieces to the puzzle and nuances. But the number one priority will be getting law enforcement officers here on duty, and obviously Mike will have to work out the dispatch situation and some other parts, but that's where we're at. And it is a crisis situation. It's an emergency situation. It's unprecedented, and it's insane, and we shouldn't be here, but unfortunately we are. And believe me, the city staff and the city council are on this and working night and day. I've been working night and day with Marty, and I know others have too. And when I say night and day, I'm talking night and day, no midnight, as Marty navigates these waters. I'm just so thankful that Marty, our city manager, and staff found and identified Mike to get us through this and initially get some peace officers on the job here performing law enforcement duties the way it should be in an incorporated city. So that's all I had, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Thomas, anything to add?
Just simply that we need to be doing something. And what it takes to operate law enforcement is beyond my capabilities. And those of us, perhaps with the exception of Gary, who have not been in law enforcement, I particularly impressed with the credentials of Mr. Maloney. The fact that he is familiar with Clinton County and Willows. And I'm looking forward to getting us through this crisis. So I would be in support of this contract.
Councilmember Pride? Anything
Yeah,
further?
I would be supportive also. You know, we're at this place where we have to move forward. I agree that Mike has the local knowledge of the area. He's got the professional experience. And really those connections with other jurisdictions around us, it's invaluable in that priority one goal that Councilmember Hansen put out there, protection of life and property. I think it's important that as we move forward, that we keep our process very transparent for those of you, so that as we take steps, I would just look to the city manager, just some way to maybe on the website, just, here's where we are. I don't know what that looks like, but just making sure that you guys all know what's going on. I think, I just think we have to do this. I mean, again, it's sad that we're at this point. I do still believe hindsight's 2020, but here we are today. So I'm supportive of this contract. So yeah, I would vote
Okay.
favorably.
I do have one question. As soon as if we put this up for a vote and it passes, which it sounds like it's going to, how soon would we get started with this? Would it be council meeting with Mr. Maloney, or would it just be staff meeting with him?
Yeah, as soon as this meeting's over, hopefully, I was going to ask Mike if he could stay after our closed session and we could start talking about how to move forward. I mean, I have spoken to Cal OES at 4 o'clock on Thursday, the day before a 3-day weekend, and they are expecting us to together make a phone call back to them and talk about our needs and how they could support us better. So that's one conversation that I've had, and I'd like Mike to participate in if the council approves this contract today.
Okay, with that, pleasure of the council.
Mr. Mayor, I move to authorize the city manager to execute an agreement with Maloney Consulting and Investigation Solutions, also known as Maloney Consulting, in the not to exceed amount of $60,000 for law enforcement related administrative consulting to assist the city of Willows with short-term law enforcement solutions, as well as assist with developing the required administrative foundation to reestablish a municipal police department in the longer term.
I have a first. Is there a second?
Second.
A first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion pass 4-0. All right, with that, thank you all for coming. Our next item will be closed session. Prior to the council convening into closed session, the public will have an opportunity to address the council regarding the items listed below pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.3. The public comments are generally restricted to 3 minutes. Closed session item 5A, conference with legal counsel, initiation of litigation, section 54956.9, subsection D, subsection 4, one case. 5B, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, section 54956.9, subsection D, subsection 1. Name of the case, City of Willows versus County of Glenn et al. Glenn County Superior Court case number 26 CV 00193. With that, we will go into closed session.
We have a comment.
Oh, sorry, public comment on closed session.
John Lowe.
Normally when we go into closed session, there's not people out here, so I'm used to.
Good to see you again. This question could be directed to council, but what's the relief that's being requested from this litigation?
Say, can you forward your question in this direction? I
Okay,
can't hear
so
you.
what is the relief expected from the litigation against the county in this litigation here, this lawsuit?
No, we can't speak to that. That's why it's closed session matters. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I mean, I can ask county council or city council if that's a correct response or not, but
It's correct. Given that
Okay.
we have discussed.
Fair enough. Thank you.
our goal is to be made whole, if that's safe to say. With that, we will go into closed session at 10:37. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, and we are returning from closed session at 11:40. City Council, Gretchen will have a report out.
Yes, on 5A, conference with legal counsel, direction was given, and at this point, more information may be coming in the future. And under 5B, an update was provided to the council and direction was given.
All right, thank you. With that, we will adjourn this meeting at 11:41. Have a good day.